What if everything we've been taught about wealth is completely backwards? In a world where success is measured by the size of our homes, the brands we wear, and the gadgets we own, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that more stuff equals more happiness. But what if the key to true abundance isn't accumulation, but letting go? The ancient philosophy of Stoicism offers a radical alternative to modern materialism, one that flips the script on what it means to be rich. Seneca, the famous Stoic thinker, put it bluntly, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Think about that for a moment. Poverty isn't about what's missing from your bank account. It's about the endless hunger for what you don't have. This video isn't just another lecture on minimalism or frugality. It's about uncovering a profound truth, that real wealth has nothing to do with possessions and everything to do with perspective. The Stoics didn't see simplicity as a sacrifice, they saw it as liberation. By detaching from the constant chase for more, they discovered a freedom most of us can barely imagine, the freedom to define value on their own terms. Imagine waking up each day unshaken by financial worries, unburdened by comparison, and utterly content with what you already possess. That's the kind of richness no market crash can touch. So how do we get there? How do we shift from a life of craving to one of clarity? Over the next few minutes, we'll explore the Stoic blueprint for rethinking material value, practical wisdom that's as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago. You'll learn how to distinguish between what's truly essential and what's merely noise, how to cultivate gratitude without complacency, and most importantly, how to measure your wealth not by what you own, but by what no one can take from you. This isn't about giving up ambition, it's about redirecting it towards something far more lasting, ready to rethink what wealth really means. Let's begin. To a Stoic, poverty isn't lacking money, it's lacking wisdom. That one idea turns our entire understanding of wealth upside down. Most of us have been conditioned to believe that financial security, luxury, and status symbols are the ultimate markers of success. But the Stoics argued that true wealth has nothing to do with what's in your wallet and everything to do with what's in your mind and character. Think about Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who lived in a tiny, unfurnished house and wore plain clothing, yet was considered one of the richest men of his time. Why? Because he measured his worth by his virtue, not his possessions. He proved that happiness isn't something you buy, it's something you cultivate within. This philosophy hinges on a crucial distinction, one that Epictetus drilled into his students, understanding what's truly ours versus what's merely external. Your reputation, your job title, even your savings account, those are all subject to change, to loss, to forces outside your control. But your integrity, your resilience, your ability to choose how you respond to life, those are unshakable. That's why the Stoics practiced living with less, not to punish themselves, but to test their freedom. When you aren't chained to material things, you're no longer at the mercy of circumstance. Consider the modern movement of downsizing, people trading sprawling homes for tiny houses, or swapping packed schedules for slower, more intentional living. It's not about deprivation, it's about reclaiming autonomy. Every item you own, every commitment you take on, demands a piece of your attention and energy. The more you accumulate, the more you have to manage, maintain, and worry about. But when you strip away the non-essential, you create space for what actually matters: time, relationships, growth. So here's a question to sit with. What would you lose if you owned nothing? Maybe the fear of losing those things in the first place. And what would you gain? Perhaps something far more valuable, the clarity to see that you were never defined by your possessions at all. The Stoics didn't just preach this idea, they lived it. And in a world that's constantly shouting, more, 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 their quiet insistence on enough might just be the most radical form of wealth there is. History remembers Crassus as the richest man in Rome, a real estate tycoon who owned entire neighborhoods, gold mines, and an army of slaves. Yet his story ends with him begging for his life, forced to drink molten gold by his enemies. The Stoics would say his downfall wasn't just political, it was philosophical. He'd built his entire identity on wealth, believing it made him untouchable. But here's the painful truth materialism refuses to admit. No amount of money can buy control over life's uncertainties. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, wrote in his private journal, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. That stark reminder wasn't meant to scare us, it was meant to free us. When we stop pretending possessions are permanent, we stop giving them power over our peace. Look at modern financial anxiety, the sleepless nights over market crashes, the panic when a luxury car gets scratched, the dread of an unexpected medical bill. These aren't just practical concerns, they're symptoms of a deeper illusion that accumulating things will somehow buffer us against life's chaos. The Stoics proposed a counterintuitive solution. Instead of stockpiling wealth to feel secure, they practiced indifference toward it, not because money is evil, but because relying on it for happiness is like building a house on sand. Epictetus, born into slavery, put it bluntly, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. He knew firsthand that the tighter you cling to externals, the more they can break you. Consider how often we confuse net worth with self-worth. That promotion that didn't come through, the neighbor's bigger house, the social media feed full of tropical vacations, each becomes a silent referendum on our value. But what if we measured ourselves by a different standard? The Stoics trained themselves to ask, if I lost this tomorrow, who would I still be? Their answer was always the same, a person capable of courage, reason, and dignity. Those are the only riches that can't be repossessed. Think of a time when clinging to something material actually made you more vulnerable. Maybe it was the fear of damaging an expensive purchase, or the stress of keeping up with payments, or even the hollow feeling after a long-awaited splurge failed to fulfill you. That's the paradox materialism won't tell you. The more you depend on possessions for security, the more insecure you become. The Stoic alternative isn't poverty, it's a shift in priority. It's recognizing that real stability comes from within, from knowing that no market downturn can devalue your character, no thief can steal your integrity, and no circumstance can diminish your ability to choose how you respond. Crassus died begging for his gold, but Seneca, who gave away his fortune voluntarily, died with his philosophy intact, proving once and for all which kind of wealth actually lasts. Imagine waking up one morning and deliberately choosing discomfort, skipping your morning coffee, wearing yesterday's clothes, or turning off the air conditioning on a hot day. To most people, that sounds like a punishment, but to the Stoics, it was a masterclass in freedom. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, regularly practiced what he called poverty training, intentionally living on the barest essentials for days or weeks at a time. Not because he hated comfort, but because he knew luxury could become a cage. His goal, to prove to himself that happiness didn't vanish when the conveniences did. In one of his letters, he wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition I feared?' Fast forward to today, where convenience is king. We have apps to deliver groceries in minutes, subscriptions to entertain us endlessly, and gadgets that eliminate even the smallest inconveniences. But here's the irony. The more we cushion ourselves from discomfort, the more fragile we become. A single missed paycheck, a delayed package, or a power outage can send us into a spiral of frustration. The Stoics would argue we've misunderstood comfort entirely. It's not about eliminating hardship, it's about strengthening our ability to thrive regardless of circumstances. This is where voluntary discomfort becomes a superpower. Try a no-spend weekend where you resist the urge to order takeout or buy that thing you've been eyeing online. Or go analog for a day, leave your phone behind, cook from scratch, or take a cold shower. These aren't acts of deprivation, they're experiments in self-reliance. Every time you willingly step away from a comfort, you're proving to yourself that your peace isn't tied to it. Epictetus, who lived with just a wooden bowl until he saw a child drinking water with cupped hands and threw even that away, put it perfectly. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. The modern world thrives on blurring the line between needs and wants. We're told we need the latest smartphone, the fastest Wi-Fi, the trendiest wardrobe. But discomfort cuts through the noise. When you strip away the extras, you start to see what actually sustains you, and it's almost always less than you think. That's the hidden gift of voluntary discomfort. It recalibrates your sense of enough. So here's a challenge. What's one comfort you could let go of, just temporarily, to test your resilience? Maybe it's sleeping on the floor for a night, or wearing the same outfit 2 days in a row, or taking public transportation instead of driving. Notice what arises: the impatience, the rationalizations, the surprising moments of clarity. Because here's the truth discomfort reveals: you were never as dependent as you believed, and that realization, that's real wealth. Right now, the average American household carries over $100,000 in debt, mortgages, student loans, credit cards, despite earning nearly twice what their grandparents did. We're making more money than ever, yet drowning in payments for things we've been convinced we need. The Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus saw this coming 2,000 years ago when he warned, "Greed does not consist in wanting little, but in wanting more, and always more." That's the cruel irony of materialism. It doesn't satisfy desire, it fuels it. Every raise becomes a reason to upgrade your car, every bonus a justification for a bigger house, until you're working not to live, but to pay for a lifestyle that's exhausting you. This isn't just about finances, it's about freedom. Think of the minimalist movement today, where people live out of backpacks or tiny homes, not because they're poor, but because they've rejected the myth that possessions equal security. They've discovered what the Stoics knew: limits aren't constraints, they're liberation. When you own less, you owe less. When you owe less, you're less tied to jobs you hate, to deadlines that drain you, to systems that demand your participation just to keep the lights on. The Stoics called this voluntary hardship, not because suffering was virtuous, but because it revealed how little you actually need to be content. Try this experiment for 1 week. Track every purchase, not just the cost, but the hidden taxes. That new jacket, it's not just $200. It's the mental energy spent choosing it, the closet space it occupies, the guilt when it sits unworn. The Stoics would ask, does this add value to your life or just weight? Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire but slept on a simple cot, wrote in his journals, "Very little is needed to make a happy life." He wasn't preaching poverty, he was exposing the lie that happiness scales with consumption. Here's the uncomfortable truth we avoid: the pursuit of more isn't ambition, it's anesthesia. It distracts us from confronting whether we even like the lives we're building. The minimalist and the Stoic arrive at the same conclusion: owning things is easy. Owning your time, your attention, your peace, that's the rarest form of wealth. So next time you're tempted to upgrade, pause and ask, is this serving me or am I serving it? Because the greatest rebellion in a world obsessed with more isn't having less, it's needing less. Seneca wrote a scathing letter to a wealthy friend who complained of poverty, exposing the absurdity of never feeling satisfied. You say you lack money, he observed, yet you dine on gold plates. That contradiction still defines modern materialism, where the goalposts of enough keep moving with every raise, bonus, or lifestyle upgrade. The Stoics called this the enough point, the moment when basic needs are met and additional wealth stops contributing to happiness. It's not a number, it's a mindset. Today's financial independence movement echoes this ancient wisdom, where people save not to accumulate luxury, but to reclaim time, proving that freedom, not possessions, is the ultimate metric of wealth. Consider two neighbors. One upgrades their car every year, chasing the fleeting high of novelty, while the other drives a decade-old model, investing instead in experiences or early retirement. Who's truly richer? Epictetus, who taught that he is a wise man who does not grieve for the things he has not, but rejoices for those he has, would argue it's the one unshaken by comparison. Modern research agrees. Studies show happiness plateaus after basic needs are met, yet we keep conflating abundance with excess. The cultural myth of scarcity thrives on manufactured dissatisfaction. Social media convinces us we need bigger homes, influencer wardrobes, or curated lifestyles. But Stoicism asks a revolutionary question: what if the chase itself is the poverty? When billionaire John D. Rockefeller was asked how much money was enough, he famously replied, "Just a little more." That's the trap. The Stoic alternative isn't settling, it's consciously defining your sufficiency. So here's your challenge. Identify one area where you've internalized more as better. Maybe it's clothes you rarely wear, gadgets collecting dust, or subscriptions draining your account. Now imagine freezing that category exactly as it is today, forever. Does the thought trigger resistance? That's the scarcity illusion talking. Because here's the secret: enough isn't a limit. It's the threshold where you stop accumulating and start living. Stoic detachment often gets misunderstood as cold indifference, as if embracing this philosophy means living like a monk, scorning all material comforts. But here's the paradox: Stoics don't hate money, they refuse to be enslaved by it. Think of wealth like a tool in your hands, useful when needed, but meaningless if it starts dictating your worth or happiness. Seneca, who amassed a fortune advising emperors, put it this way: hold wealth lightly, like a passing guest, not a permanent resident. That's the delicate balance. It's not about rejecting resources, it's about refusing to let them distort your sense of self. Take modern tech CEOs who donate billions instead of hoarding them. They're not dismissing money's value, they're proving it doesn't own them. They fund education, cure diseases, then walk away without needing their names on buildings. That's Stoic detachment in action, using wealth as fuel for purpose, not as a trophy. Compare that to someone obsessed with luxury brands, whose confidence crumbles if they can't flaunt the latest status symbol. The difference isn't in their bank accounts, it's in their relationship to what those numbers mean. This philosophy hinges on a subtle but powerful shift from "I am rich" to "I have riches." The first ties your identity to externals, the second acknowledges them as temporary tools. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire, wrote reminders to himself like, "You are just a soul carrying around a corpse." Brutal, maybe, but it underscores the Stoic truth: nothing material defines you. Not your car, not your title, not even your savings. Those things can be lost overnight. What remains your character, your choices, is where real security lies. So how do you engage with money without letting it define you? Start by noticing the stories you attach to it. Does a bigger paycheck feel like validation? Does a financial setback feel like failure? Those emotional hooks reveal where you've handed over power. Try this next time you make a purchase. Pause and ask, am I buying this because it serves me or because I want it to say something about me? The answer might surprise you. Detachment isn't indifference, it's clarity. It's knowing that wealth can open doors, but only you can walk through them. The Stoics didn't advocate poverty, they championed sovereignty. Because freedom isn't having everything, it's needing nothing to feel whole. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his private journal, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." Then he did something extraordinary. He mentally stripped away everything else: his title as emperor, his palace, even the clothes on his back, until only his core remained. This wasn't morbid thinking, it was liberation. The Stoics called it negative visualization, the practice of imagining loss to rediscover sufficiency. Picture your home right now. The stacks of unworn clothes, the gadgets gathering dust, the souvenirs you keep out of obligation rather than joy. Each one isn't just taking up physical space, it's leasing room in your mind. Every unused item whispers, "You might need me someday," feeding the illusion that abundance means options when often it's just weight. Consider the modern closet, jam-packed yet somehow always lacking. Studies show we wear only 20% of our clothes 80% of the time. That's 80% of your wardrobe acting as background noise, demanding storage, organization, and mental energy. Now imagine opening that closet to see only what you truly love and use. That's not deprivation, that's clarity. Epictetus, who owned little more than a cloak and a staff, observed, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things." The sweater you haven't worn in years isn't the problem, it's the guilt about discarding it, the sunk cost fallacy whispering, "But it was expensive," or the identity you attach to it, like, "I'm the kind of person who owns designer clothes." Here's a challenge today: remove one item from your home that no longer serves you, not as a decluttering tactic, but as a philosophical experiment. Notice the resistance that arises, the what-if scenarios, the sentimental bargaining. That tension is where growth happens. When you release the object, observe what else leaves with it, perhaps a sliver of unnecessary worry, or the quiet burden of maintaining appearances. The Stoics weren't minimalists by default, they were intentionalists by design. They knew physical clutter is just visible mental clutter. Seneca wrote letters from his modest country villa about the relief of escaping Rome's glittering torment, where wealth wasn't just displayed but performed. Negative visualization flips the script on loss. Instead of fearing it, you rehearse it, not to dwell in lack, but to uncover the startling truth that you'd still be you without that thing. Try this: walk through your home and silently thank each object, then mentally let it go. The couch, the books, even your phone. Feel the momentary panic, then the quiet realization. Your hands are empty, but you're still whole. That's the alchemy of letting go. It doesn't shrink your life, it expands your freedom. So ask yourself, what's one possession you've been keeping not because it adds value, but because you've forgotten how to live without it? The answer might surprise you. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, once compared wealth to a walking stick. Hold it lightly, and it aids your journey. Lean your full weight on it, and it will crack beneath you. That simple image captures the Stoic view of money, neither good nor evil, but powerful in how we wield it. Imagine two people inheriting the same fortune. One builds libraries and funds schools, seeing wealth as fuel for collective growth. The other hoards it behind gated estates, fearing loss. The difference isn't in their bank balances, it's in their philosophy. Seneca, who navigated the extremes of Roman opulence and exile's austerity, wrote that riches are like water. They quench thirst but drown the careless. He didn't scorn money, he scorned the delusion that it could replace virtue. Consider modern philanthropists who treat wealth as a renewable resource, investing in vaccines, education, or clean energy. Their giving isn't charity, it's stewardship. Contrast that with the billionaires racing to buy vanity space projects while communities lack basic infrastructure. The Stoic question isn't, how much do you have, but what does your having it make possible? This distinction cuts through our cultural obsession with net worth. A teacher with a modest salary who tutors students for free may be richer in Stoic terms than a CEO obsessed with stock fluctuations. Why? Because the teacher's resources, time, knowledge, care are actively nurturing human potential. The CEO's millions, if clutched in fear or spent on empty status symbols, become what Seneca called golden shackles. So here's a challenge. Audit not just your finances, but your relationship to them. When you tip generously, donate quietly, or lend without expectation, you're practicing wealth as a verb, not a possession, but an action. The Stoics would ask, are your resources gathering dust or building bridges? Because a walking stick only serves its purpose when it helps you and others move forward. Nero built a rotating dining room with ivory ceilings that showered petals on guests while Rome's citizens starved. His excess didn't make him happy, it made him paranoid, poisoning his food tasters and sleeping with a dagger under his pillow. The Stoics saw this coming. Luxury doesn't elevate life, it becomes a full-time job. Every gilded object demanded guards, every silk robe needed specialists to clean it, until the emperor became a prisoner of his own possessions. Seneca, who witnessed this decay firsthand, wrote, "What was intended to serve now must be served." That's the paradox no advertiser will tell you. The more you own, the more your things own you. Fast forward to today's version of excess, the unused gym membership auto-deducting from your account, the premium cable package with 500 channels you never watch, the kitchen gadget collecting dust after one use. Musonius Rufus nailed it centuries ago. What's necessary is easy to obtain, the superfluous is hard. Necessary, a roof, simple meals, basic clothing, all relatively straightforward. But superfluous, that's where life gets complicated. The designer handbag requiring insurance and constant vigilance against scratches. The vacation home that demands repairs, taxes, and weekend commutes. The luxury car whose depreciation keeps you awake at night. We call these upgrades, but the Stoics recognize them for what they are, voluntary burdens. Consider the modern smartphone. A basic model makes calls and sends messages, maybe checks the weather. But the latest premium version, it needs a $60 case to protect its fragile glass, cloud storage for all those high-resolution photos, and constant upgrades to justify its price tag. The Stoic approach would ask, does this tool serve you, or have you become its maintenance crew? Epictetus took this further, suggesting we regularly ask of our possessions. If you wish to keep it, then think of it as something that's not truly yours, just as travelers regard a hotel room. Here's the litmus test. Pick one. Luxury in your life may be the car payment that strains your budget, the closet full of clothes you rarely wear, or the subscription boxes piling up unopened. Now ask, does this simplify my life or secretly complicate it? The answer often reveals a startling truth. That espresso machine you had to have now demands expensive beans, descaling rituals, and counter space. The luxury isn't just costing you money, it's costing you attention, time, and mental bandwidth. Nero died fleeing through his golden palace. begging his slaves to kill him before his enemies could. His wealth couldn't save him, it slowed him down. The Stoics proposed an alternative path, lightness, not poverty, but intentionality, because real freedom isn't owning everything you desire, it's desiring nothing that owns you. Seneca opened his essay on the shortness of life with a piercing observation. Life is long if you know how to use it. Then he delivered the gut punch most people don't. We complain about time's scarcity while squandering hours maintaining things that add no real value. The average person spends 153 days of their life just cleaning possessions they barely use. That's not housekeeping, that's servitude to stuff. The Stoics measured wealth not in coins but in moments well spent. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now," he wasn't being morbid. He was issuing a wake-up call to audit how we exchange our irreplaceable time for trivial comforts. This philosophy finds modern expression in the FIRE movement, financial independence. Retire early, where people save aggressively not to buy yachts, but to reclaim their hours. The math is revealing. Every dollar spent represents minutes of your life traded to earn it. That $5 coffee may be 20 minutes of work, the luxury car lease. Months, maybe years of labor. The Stoic question isn't, can I afford this? But, is this worth the life I'm exchanging for it? Musonius Rufus trained his students to ask, what are you gaining when you take this from yourself? Meaning the time, energy, and freedom sacrificed for every acquisition. Consider two colleagues. One clocks overtime to afford a bigger home with rooms they rarely enter, while the other lives modestly, banking hours instead of square footage. Who's truly richer? The answer becomes obvious when illness strikes, or relationships fracture, or children grow up while we're too busy maintaining lifestyles. Seneca saw this coming. People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they're most wasteful of the one thing for which it's respectable to be greedy. Here's the uncomfortable arithmetic materialism avoids. If you earn $50,000 a year working 2,000 hours, every hour of your life is worth $25 before taxes. That conference table you financed for $2,000, that's 80 hours of your existence, 2 full work weeks gone. The Stoics would challenge you to convert every potential purchase into its true cost, not dollars but days. Does that new gadget still seem worth a weekend of your finite life? The modern world preaches multitasking as virtue, but the Stoics practiced monotasking as wisdom. Epictetus dismissed distractions as thefts of presence, every notification pulling you from deeper engagement with your own existence. Imagine applying Seneca's time accounting to your average day. How many hours vanish into social media scrolling, commute drudgery, or maintaining possessions that don't spark joy? The Japanese art of tidying asks if objects bring happiness. The Stoic upgrade asks if they're worth the time they demand from your numbered days. Try this experiment. For 1 week, track time spent cleaning, insuring, upgrading, or worrying about possessions. Then calculate what percentage of your waking life that represents. The results often reveal a chilling truth. We've outsourced our sovereignty to things that subtract more value than they add. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire but wrote, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." That's not nihilism, it's liberation. When you stop measuring wealth by what you accumulate and start measuring it by what you're freed to experience, you've discovered the Stoic secret. Time is the only currency that can't be earned back. Spend it accordingly. Epictetus cut straight to the heart of our modern discontent when he said, "Freedom isn't secured by filling your purse but by emptying your greed." That simple twist of logic exposes the real thief of peace, not what we lack, but what we insist on wanting because someone else has it. Think about the last time you scrolled through social media and felt that quiet pang of envy, the vacation photos, the kitchen remodels, the curated snapshots of seemingly perfect lives. Here's what those platforms won't tell you. Comparison doesn't just steal joy, it manufactures needs you never had until you saw someone else fulfilling them. Seneca called this the madness of crowds, the dangerous illusion that because everyone is chasing something, it must be worth chasing, history's richest irony. The more access we have to others' lives, the poorer we feel. Ancient Rome had its version of influencers, politicians flaunting villas, merchants parading exotic imports. Seneca recoiled at this spectacle, writing, "No one is happy with what they have when they're convinced others have more." Fast forward 2,000 years and the game hasn't changed, only the stage. That fitness guru's six-pack, your colleague's promotion, the neighbor's new car, each becomes a silent benchmark, shifting the goalposts of enough without your consent. The Stoics proposed a radical solution: stop looking sideways. Social comparison preys on a fundamental misunderstanding that possessions or achievements are the root of happiness. But consider this: the billionaire envied for their private jet may be trapped in a gilded cage of stress, while the school teacher with a modest garden sleeps soundly. Epictetus, born into slavery, understood that envy is a trick of perspective. He taught his students to ask, "What does this person actually have that I truly need?" The answer, almost always, is nothing. The designer watch won't gift you more hours. The luxury vacation won't heal fractured relationships. Yet we trade our peace for these illusions daily. Here's a thought experiment. Imagine waking up tomorrow to find every social media account wiped clean. No curated feeds, no highlight reels, just the raw, unfiltered silence of your own life. What would you miss? More importantly, what burdens would vanish? The silent pressure to upgrade, to perform, to keep up. Seneca advised his friend Lucilius to withdraw into yourself as often as possible, not to escape reality, but to rediscover it. Without the noise of comparison, your true needs come into focus. So here's your challenge for 1 week. Notice every time envy whispers, not to judge it, but to interrogate it. That friend's tropical getaway, does it spark genuine longing, or just the fear of being left out? The coworker's new title, does it reflect your own aspirations or society's script? The Stoics weren't against ambition, they were against borrowed desire. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And nothing pollutes thought faster than measuring your life against someone else's highlight reel. The next time you catch yourself in the comparison trap, remember Epictetus' question: is this envy serving my freedom or chaining it? Because real wealth isn't having what others covet, it's coveting nothing that isn't yours to begin with. Marcus Aurelius began each morning with a ritual so simple yet profound. He listed reasons to be grateful before his feet even touched the floor. Not for grand achievements or possessions, but for the warmth of sunlight through a window, the strength in his hands, the clarity of his thoughts. This wasn't just optimism. It was strategic armor against the creeping dissatisfaction of materialism. The Stoics understood something modern science now confirms. Gratitude doesn't just feel good, it rewires our perception of abundance. While advertisers spend billions convincing us happiness lives in the next purchase, ancient wisdom suggests it's been hiding in plain sight all along, in the ordinary moments we've trained ourselves to overlook. Consider the stark contrast between two notebooks, one filled with a gratitude journal, the other with a consumer wish list. The first amplifies what's already present. I'm thankful for this sturdy pair of shoes that carried me through the week. The second whispers of inadequacy. I need the latest sneakers to feel complete. One cultivates contentment, the other manufactures lack. The Stoics didn't dismiss ambition, they redirected it. Why chase what you haven't earned when you haven't fully appreciated what you've already received? Epictetus, who owned almost nothing, put it bluntly. He is a wise man who does not grieve for what he has not, but rejoices in what he has. That shift from mourning absence to celebrating presence is the ultimate rebellion against a culture that profits from your discontent. Try this modern twist on Stoic practice, a no-spend gratitude walk. Leave your wallet at home and stroll through your neighborhood, noticing only what money can't buy: the scent of rain on pavement, the laughter drifting from a playground, the way shadows dance under oak trees. Every time your mind drifts to desires, that cafe's new pastry looks amazing, counter with appreciation. How fortunate to live where bakers share their craft. This isn't denial, it's reclamation. Consumerism teaches us to see the world as a catalog of things we don't own. Gratitude flips the script, revealing the invisible wealth we've been swimming in all along: fresh air, quiet moments, the miracle of a functioning body. The magic lies in gratitude's alchemy. It transforms have to into get to. That sweater you've worn for years isn't outdated. It's a trusted companion that's kept you warm through countless winters. Your small apartment isn't cramped. It's a shelter that's witnessed your quietest joys. Even hardships become grist for growth when viewed through this lens. Seneca wrote letters from exile praising the countryside's beauty, calling banishment the gift that freed him from Rome's frenzy. Modern psychology echoes this. People who journal gratitude report higher happiness levels than those tracking accomplishments. Why? Because achievement demands more achievement, while thankfulness reveals the abundance already here. So tonight, before sleep, try Marcus' ritual in reverse. Recall 3 mundane gifts today offered: clean water from your tap, a friend's text that made you smile, the ability to read these words. Notice how your mind, trained to spot lacks, resists at first. That resistance is the muscle Stoicism strengthens. With practice, you'll catch Materialism's whispers earlier: if only I had, and replace them with the deeper truth: look what I've been given. The paradox: the less you need to feel rich, the richer you become. Seneca watched with amusement as wealthy Romans rushed to buy the latest imported silks or ornate furniture, then wrote scathingly about how impulse purchases reveal a deeper poverty, not of coins but of purpose. He noticed something we still struggle with today: the faster we acquire, the less we actually possess. Those silk robes, they'd be discarded when fashions changed. The gold-trimmed couches, soon eclipsed by someone else's even more extravagant decor. The problem wasn't spending money, it was spending attention, energy, and pieces of one's life on things that didn't truly matter. This is where Stoic spending diverges from modern consumerism. Before reaching for their coin purses, Stoics practiced what we might now call the virtue pause. Epictetus instructed his students to interrogate every potential purchase with 3 questions. Do I need this? Will it improve my character? Or is this just feeding a temporary craving? That moment of hesitation, where we step back from the rush of want and ask why, is where mindful consumption begins. Today's minimalists echo this with their one in, one out rule, but the Stoics took it further. It wasn't just about physical clutter, it was about ethical accounting. Every expense represented time spent earning those coins, time that could never be reclaimed. Think about your last regretted purchase. Maybe it was the expensive kitchen gadget that now gathers dust, the trendy outfit worn once, or the subscription you forgot to cancel. Beyond the wasted money, what did that choice reveal? Often, it's not about the object itself, but the story we attach to it: the fantasy of being the kind of person who uses premium cookware, or the hope that those shoes might make us feel more confident. The Stoics would call this externally sourced validation, and they saw it as the most expensive habit of all. Musonius Rufus taught that impulsive buying isn't just a financial misstep, it's a philosophical one, where we outsource our sense of worth to things that can't possibly provide it. Here's the alternative. Next time you're tempted to click buy now, institute Seneca's waiting period. For anything over $50, sleep on it. For bigger purchases, wait a month. Notice what happens in that space, how often the burning urge cools into indifference, or how sometimes the desire returns with clearer purpose. This isn't deprivation, it's distillation, like a Stoic version of Marie Kondo's Spark Joy, but asking a sharper question: does this serve my growth? Consider the Japanese concept of mottainai, a term conveying regret over waste, but also deep respect for resources. When applied to spending, it mirrors the Stoic view. Money isn't evil, but squandering it on empty distractions dishonors the life energy it represents. That's why Marcus Aurelius kept a plain wooden cup despite his imperial wealth, not because gold goblets were immoral, but because they added no real value to the act of drinking. The water tastes the same either way, so here's your challenge. Pick one upcoming purchase, maybe those concert tickets, that new tool, or even this week's groceries, and subject it to the Stoic audit. Not just can I afford this, but what will this truly cost me in attention, maintenance, or future trade-offs? And more crucially, if I don't buy this, what richer possibility might that space hold? Because intentional spending isn't about restriction, it's about making room for what actually nourishes your soul. Cato the Younger, one of history's most uncompromising Stoics, faced a dilemma familiar to any parent. What do I leave my child? But while most Roman nobles scrambled to amass fortunes for their heirs, Cato took a radical approach. He invested not in land or gold, but in philosophy tutors. His son's inheritance wasn't a vault of coins. It was the unshakable ability to navigate life's storms with wisdom. This wasn't neglect, it was the ultimate act of love. Because Stoics understood a truth we often forget. The greatest legacies aren't transferred through wills, but through the quiet daily lessons of how to live. As Musonius Rufus observed, children admire fathers who live rightly, not richly. Think about that shift, from leaving behind wealth to cultivating worthiness. Consider two fathers. One works 80-hour weeks to fund a trust fund. The other spends evenings teaching his daughter how to question fear, endure hardship, and find joy in simplicity. Decades later, whose child inherits more? The first might receive a lump sum, but the second gains something no market crash can touch: a mindset. This is the Stoic view of inheritance, not what you give, but what you grow. Seneca, who tutored Nero, saw firsthand how unearned riches corrupt. He warned that leaving money without virtue is like handing a sword to someone who's never been taught restraint. History brims with cautionary tales. The Vanderbilt family, once America's wealthiest, famously squandered their copper fortune within generations. Meanwhile, Socrates, who owned nothing but a tattered cloak, still shapes minds 24 centuries later. The difference: one legacy was measured in dollars, the other in ideas. This isn't to say Stoics rejected material support. Epictetus praised parents who provided education, but they prioritized equipping heirs to thrive regardless of circumstance. Imagine teaching a child to fish rather than stocking their freezer. One solution is finite, the other infinite. Here's the uncomfortable question materialism avoids. When you're gone, will your descendants remember what you gave them or who you helped them become? A family business passed down isn't just an asset, it's a lesson in stewardship. A well-worn book collection isn't just paper, it's an invitation to think deeper. Even heirlooms transform when imbued with meaning, not "this necklace is valuable," But this necklace survived war and migration, just as you can survive hardship. So ask yourself, what non-material wealth do you want to pass on? Maybe it's the habit of morning reflection, the courage to admit mistakes, or the discipline to distinguish needs from wants. These are the inheritances that compound, not in bank accounts, but in resilience, in quiet confidence, in the unspoken knowledge that no matter what life takes, something essential remains. The Stoics didn't just teach this, they lived it, and in doing so, they left us a legacy far richer than gold, the blueprint for building what no one can take away. Epictetus loved comparing life to a voyage. You can meticulously prepare your ship, study the maps, and check the weather, but the ocean decides whether storms come. That's the Stoic secret to financial anxiety. Focus on the work of your hands, not the whims of the waves. Modern finance preaches control, maximize returns, hedge risks, predict markets, but the Stoics recognized this as illusion. What's truly yours, not your portfolio's value, but the discipline to save, the wisdom to diversify, the courage to face downturns without unraveling. The difference between prudence and panic lies in one question. Are you preparing for storms or obsessing over them? Take emergency funds. A Stoic builds one not from fear, but from clarity. 3 months' expenses set aside to buy breathing room if jobs shift or markets dip. That's control where it exists. Contrast this with the neighbor converting their basement into a doomsday bunker, stockpiling gold bars and canned goods. Both are preparing, but one is anchored in reason, the other in dread. Seneca, who survived exile and financial ruin, wrote, "Poverty adjusted to the law of nature is great wealth." He wasn't glorifying hardship. He was exposing how little we actually require to persist and how much energy we waste fearing phantom losses. Consider 2 investors during a market crash. One frantically sells assets at a loss, haunted by headlines. The other brews tea, reviews their long-term plan, and maybe even buys undervalued stocks. Same event, vastly different experiences. Why? As Epictetus put it, it's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. Financial security isn't about avoiding downturns. It's about cultivating an inner stability no fluctuation can shake. That's why Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, envisioning worst-case scenarios, not to dwell on them but to disarm their terror. Imagine losing half your net worth tomorrow. Now ask, would you still have shelter, food, loved ones, the ability to rebuild? Suddenly, the monster under the bed shrinks. Here's the paradox: the less you fear loss, the less power it holds. Those who hoard out of panic become prisoners to their OWN Chinese letter, constantly monitoring threats, distrusting systems, living in perpetual scarcity mode. But those who prepare wisely then release their grip. They discover what Seneca called the wealth of self-sufficiency, not because they have everything, but because they've made peace with potentially having less. So try this mental exercise today. Pick one financial fear, job loss, a crashed market, unexpected medical bills, and walk it through to its end. What's the actual worst that could happen? How would you adapt? You'll likely find that your resilience outstrips your imagination. That's the gift Stoicism offers, not a guarantee against hardship, but the certainty that you can meet it without breaking. After all, a ship's strength isn't tested in calm waters, but in storms. And the sailors who survive aren't those who curse the waves, but those who learn to adjust their sails. Ancient Rome's marketplace buzzed with merchants hawking exotic perfumes from Arabia, silk tunics shipped from China, and elaborate furniture inlaid with ivory, each item promising to elevate its owner's status. Fast forward 2,000 years, and the script hasn't changed, only the medium. Instead of forum vendors, we have targeted ads whispering that happiness lives in the next click. the upgraded model, the limited edition release. But here's what marketers won't tell you. Their most lucrative product isn't the item they're selling, it's the dissatisfaction they manufacture to make you buy it. The Stoics saw this game clearly. Seneca mocked Romans who purchased their own ruin, trading gold for gilded emptiness. His insight cuts deeper today. Advertising doesn't just sell solutions. It first convinces you there's a problem you never noticed. That itch for a newer phone, the sudden urge to revamp your entire wardrobe, those aren't your desires, they're borrowed scripts. Consider the psychology behind limited time offers or exclusive memberships. These aren't conveniences, they're psychological traps exploiting our fear of missing out. The Stoics called this the opinion of the many, the dangerous assumption that because crowds rush toward something, it must hold value. Marcus Aurelius saw through the spectacle, writing, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Spend hours absorbing ads telling you you're incomplete without X, Y, or Z, and soon you'll forget what true sufficiency feels like." Modern research confirms this. The more ads we consume, the more we overestimate others' wealth and underestimate our own adequacy. It's a rigged game where the house always wins unless you step away from the table. Here's where Stoic logic becomes revolutionary. If advertising thrives on manufactured discontent, the antidote is intentional deprivation, not of necessities but of the noise shaping your wants. Try a 30-day media fast. Unsubscribe from promotional emails, mute influencers, skip ads with a browser extension. At first, you'll feel phantom urges, the reflexive reach for your phone to check deals, the twinge when passing a billboard. But soon, something remarkable happens. Like a fog lifting, you start hearing your own voice again. That sweater you've worn for years, suddenly it's just enough. The phone that needed upgrading, it works fine. Marcus Aurelius whispered the truth centuries ago. Very little is needed to make a happy life, but we've been conditioned to confuse little with less than. The real test comes when you reintroduce media gradually. Notice how ads that once felt exciting now seem absurd. The dramatic music over a shampoo bottle, the contrived scenarios implying your relationships hinge on car brands. That's the Stoic advantage in action. You're no longer a passive consumer but a critic of desire itself. Epictetus offered the ultimate filter. When something tempts you, ask, "If I don't buy this, what will I lack?" The answer, 99 times out of 100, is nothing. Because real needs, nourishment, shelter, connection aren't sold in commercials. They're unearthed when we mute the world's chatter and remember who we were before we were told what to want. Cleans, the Stoic philosopher who succeeded Zeno, spent his nights studying wisdom and his days hauling water. Literally, while other philosophers debated in marble halls, he earned his keep by manual labor, carrying jugs through Athens streets. When mocked for this humble work, he'd smile and say, "I water the plants, but I also water my soul." That simple act contained a radical idea. Labor isn't just a means to an end, it's where philosophy meets the pavement. The Stoics didn't see work as separate from virtue. They saw it as the forge where character is hammered into reality. Modern hustle culture twists this truth. It glorifies overwork, not for the sake of contribution, but for the sake of accumulation, burning the midnight oil to afford luxury watches that tell us we're exhausted. Seneca spotted this trap 2 millennia ago. Men work until they no longer recognize their own reflection, then spend their earnings trying to recover what they lost. The difference between grinding and serving lies in intention. A doctor working double shifts to clear medical debt for a village isn't hustling, they're fulfilling. A trader obsessively checking stocks for a third vacation home, that's the hamster wheel Stoics warned about. Seneca, who advised Emperor Nero, wrote that all work becomes dignified when tied to purpose. "Dig ditches if you must," he said, "but dig them as if each shovel stroke could save a life." Imagine applying that lens to your own job, not "how much does this pay?" but "how does this heal, teach, or build?" A barrister becomes a catalyst for morning conversations that spark ideas. A programmer writes code that might streamline a nurse's paperwork, giving her more time with patients. Even collecting trash, when framed as protecting a community's health, transforms from drudgery to duty. Here's the litmus test. Picture your work vanishing tomorrow. Who would feel its absence? If the answer is only your bank account, it's time to recalibrate. But if your absence would leave a hole in someone's life, clients who rely on you, colleagues who trust you, strangers who benefit indirectly, you've stumbled upon Stoic wealth, labor that outlasts the paycheck. So tonight, try clean's exercise. Reframe one mundane task not as an obligation, but as an offering. Filing paperwork becomes preserving order. Answering emails becomes connecting minds. Even commuting can morph into a daily meditation if you view it as the thread stitching together your contribution. Because the Stoics knew a secret hustle culture ignores. The deepest exhaustion doesn't come from hard work, it comes from work stripped of meaning. Pour yourself into labor that pours into others, and you'll never burn out. You'll light up. Seneca once wrote a letter lamenting how Romans filled their days with meaningless busyness, rushing between social calls, gossip sessions, and trivial errands while complaining they had no time for philosophy. Swap togas for smartphones, and his words sting with modern relevance. Today's digital clutter, endless notifications, auto-playing videos, the compulsive scroll isn't just stealing our hours, it's fracturing our ability to think deeply, the very skill Stoics considered sacred. Imagine Seneca observing a typical morning. Someone checks their phone before their eyelids fully open, scans emails mid-conversation, and consumes news headlines while walking, all before breakfast. He'd recognize this not as productivity, but as a new form of poverty. Attention spread so thin it never truly lands anywhere. The average person touches their phone over 2,000 times a day, not because they need to, but because their focus has been conditioned to crave constant interruption. Epictetus saw this coming. If you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters. His advice cuts through the noise of modern digital culture, where appearing informed about every viral trend feels mandatory. But what's the cost? A study from the University of California found it takes 23 minutes to fully regain focus after a single notification. Multiply that by daily interruptions, and you've surrendered entire weeks each year to digital distractions that add no real value to your life. Enter the Stoic digital Sabbath, a deliberate pause from the noise. Not as a permanent rejection of technology, but as a weekly recalibration. For 24 hours, silence non-essential alerts, stash your phone in a drawer, and reclaim what the ancients called otium sanctum, a sacred leisure. This isn't laziness, it's the space where reflection thrives. Picture a Saturday where you read physical books, cook without documenting the process, or talk face-to-face without devices between you. At first, you'll feel phantom vibrations in your pocket, the psychological equivalent of an amputee's ghost limb. But by afternoon, something shifts, thoughts stretch deeper. Conversations last longer. You rediscover the forgotten art of boredom, where creativity sparks not from external stimuli, but from the quiet within. Epictetus offered a filter for every action. First say what you'd be, then do what you have to do. Apply this to your digital life. Want to be a focused writer? Delete social media apps during work hours. Aspire to deeper relationships. Designate phone-free dinners. The gap between who you are and who you wish to be is often bridged not by adding more tools, but by removing distractions. Consider how Steve Jobs, who pioneered the smartphone, strictly limited his children's screen time, or how Cal Newport's digital minimalism movement echoes Stoic principles, curating technology to serve purpose, not erode it. The real test comes when you reintroduce devices gradually. Notice which apps feel like reuniting with old friends and which resemble picking up a lit cigarette. That split-second hesitation before opening Instagram, that's your Stoic guard dog, as Epictetus called it, warning you when you're about to feed a habit rather than a need. Digital minimalism isn't about living like a hermit. It's about designing a technological environment where your attention, your most sacred resource, is spent on what aligns with your highest self. Because in a world where everyone's shouting for your eyes, the quietest rebellion is choosing where to rest your gaze. Diogenes famously lived in a barrel, owning nothing but a cloak and a wooden bowl, until he saw a child drink water from cupped hands and discarded even that. His life was a walking contradiction to Athens' opulence, proving daily that abundance isn't about accumulation but perception. While merchants haggled over silk and spices, he'd bask in sunlight, laugh with strangers, and feast on olives gifted by the market. The Stoics saw in him a profound truth. Nature never whispers, "You need more." A forest doesn't tally its trees, nor does a river fret over its depth. It's only humans who invent scarcity where none exists. Modern science now confirms what Diogenes knew instinctively. The Japanese practice of Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing, reduces stress hormones by simply sitting among trees. No purchases, no upgrades, just presence. Gardening, too, becomes a Stoic meditation when you consider how a single tomato seed worth fractions of a cent can yield pounds of fruit with nothing but soil, water, and patience. These aren't hobbies, they're rebellions against a culture that monetizes peace. Marcus Aurelius marveled at this in his Meditations. The universe provides for every creature's need, not greed. Look at the birds, they leave each morning empty-beaked and return full. Think of the last time nature made you feel wealthy without spending. Maybe it was the scent of rain on dry earth, the weightlessness of swimming in a lake, or the quiet awe of watching clouds rearrange at sunset. These moments share a common thread: they're unownable. You can't trademark a sunset or put a price tag on the feeling of grass under bare feet, yet their value surpasses any luxury. Contrast this with the engineered scarcity of modern life: limited edition sneakers, VIP memberships, or the myth that you need a new car to match your growth. Nature doesn't deal in exclusivity. Her riches are democratized. There's a reason we instinctively seek the ocean after burnout or hike mountains to clear our heads. Beyond the fresh air, we're returning to a primal metric of enoughness. A pine cone doesn't question if it's enough of a pine cone. It simply exists, contributing to the ecosystem without self-doubt. When we immerse in nature, we recalibrate to that baseline. The Stoics called this amor fati, love of fate, but also love of the inherent sufficiency in what is. So here's an experiment this week: trade one consumer ritual for a natural one. Swap the coffee shop latte for a thermos brewed at home, drunk under a tree. Replace scrolling through shopping sites with sketching a leaf's veins. Notice how nature's abundance-free, uncomplicated, unconcerned with trends, quietly exposes the emptiness of chasing more. Diogenes didn't live in a barrel because he hated beauty. He did it to prove something radical: that the world's riches were already within reach, if only we'd unclench our fists. Seneca urged his wealthy students to give while you live, not as a financial strategy, but as spiritual hygiene. He watched Roman aristocrats draft elaborate wills, leaving fortunes to distant heirs while ignoring the suffering outside their gates, and called this delayed generosity what it was: vanity in disguise. True giving to the Stoics wasn't about legacy building or tax deductions. It was a daily practice of loosening materialism's grip. When you donate your last coin to someone hungrier, you're not just feeding them, you're starving your own greed. Modern effective altruism echoes this, calculating how many malaria nets $50 can buy versus another latte machine collecting dust in your kitchen. But Stoic philanthropy goes deeper than efficient charity. It questions why we hesitate to give in the first place. That hesitation often reveals hidden attachments. Imagine two donors. One writes a check to have their name engraved on a hospital wing. The other anonymously covers a stranger's medical bill. Both help, but only one exercises non-attachment, the willingness to erase oneself from the equation. Epictetus trained his students to give, as a vine produces grapes, without expectation of thanks or recognition. This flips modern philanthropy's script, where social media turn good deeds into performance art. Real giving, Stoics argue, should feel almost forgettable, like tossing a pebble into a pond and walking away before the ripples form. Yet money is just one currency. Musonius Rufus taught that the wealthiest gift is often time, the hours spent mentoring, listening, or simply being fully present. Consider the lawyer offering pro bono work not for accolades, but because justice shouldn't hinge on bank balances. Or the neighbor who shares homegrown tomatoes without keeping score. These acts share a Stoic thread. They dissolve the illusion that generosity requires surplus. You don't wait until you have enough. You realize you already do. So here's the challenge. What can you surrender today that isn't monetary? Maybe it's the need to be right in an argument, freeing both of you from conflict. Or your old books passed to a student who'll underline them with fresh wonder. Even your pride when apologizing. These are the invisible philanthropies that shape character. Because the ultimate gift Stoicism identifies isn't from your wallet, but your ego. The quiet understanding that to hold something loosely is to hold it forever. Epictetus once described debt as invisible chains, some forged by circumstance, but most welded link by link through our own choices. He watched his fellow Athenians trade their freedom for marble villas and imported silks, then spend sleepless nights calculating interest payments. The irony wasn't lost on him. The very things they bought to flaunt their status became the weights dragging them underwater. Stoicism draws a sharp line between two kinds of debt. The first is practical, a modest mortgage for shelter, a student loan that unlocks earning potential. These are tools, not traps. The second, the soul-crushing kind, maxed-out credit cards for luxury vacations, car leases to impress strangers at stoplights, the relentless upgrade cycle that turns yesterday's must-have into today's clutter. The difference isn't in the dollar amounts, but in the why. Does this debt serve your growth or just your ego? Seneca, who managed Rome's finances as Nero's advisor, saw through the illusion of buy now, pay later. He wrote, "A wise man owes nothing, not because he hoards gold, but because he masters desire." Consider modern college graduates. One leaves school with engineering debt but skills to repay it, another with a philosophy degree and luxury apartment debt. Both owe money, but only one owes their future. This is the Stoic litmus test. Will this debt expand your capacity or shrink your sovereignty? Try this exercise. Grab a notebook and divide it into 2 columns. Label the first, chains I chose, and the second, tools I use. For every debt, student loans, medical bills, credit cards, ask, did this purchase address a true need or a manufactured one? Did it add lasting value or temporary status? Be brutally honest. That gym membership charging your card for months unused, that's not fitness debt, that's forgetfulness debt. The laptop you financed for freelance work, that might be your modern plow, an investment tilling future harvests. The goal isn't guilt but clarity. Watch what happens when you trace each debt back to its origin. The $3,000 couch bought to host parties no one attended reveals itself not as furniture debt, but loneliness debt. The payday loan covering last year's Vegas trip wasn't bad luck, it was priority debt. Epictetus offered an antidote. Freedom isn't secured by filling your purse but by emptying your cravings. This isn't about austerity. It's about auditing the emotional taxes hidden in every payment. Now flip the script. What if you treated debt repayment like a philosopher's quest? Each dollar returned isn't just balancing a ledger. It's breaking a link in those invisible chains. Celebrate every $100 cleared like Seneca celebrating a newfound truth. Because here's the paradox: the faster you run from discomfort, the heavier debt feels. But face it with Stoic resolve, and you'll find something unexpected, not just financial progress, but the quiet pride of a gladiator cutting himself free. Cato the Elder, that famously stern Stoic, was known to walk through Rome's bustling markets with a grin, not to buy, but to revel in resisting. When merchants pressed him to purchase their finest imports, he'd laugh and declare, "I came to admire, not acquire." This wasn't bitterness, it was the joy of a man who discovered a secret. Austerity, when chosen, becomes a kind of abundance. Too often, frugality gets mislabeled as deprivation, the grim-faced scrimping of someone counting pennies. But Stoicism paints a radically different picture. Imagine a musician who finds more creativity in 3 strings than a full orchestra, or a chef who coaxes extraordinary flavor from 5 humble ingredients. That's the essence of what modern minimalists call enoughism, not settling for less, but discovering how little you truly need to feel full. Take the capsule wardrobe movement. Where fast fashion screams more, these curators prove that 10 thoughtfully chosen outfits can spark more confidence than a closet bursting with unworn trends. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who wore the same rough cloak year-round, would nod in recognition. He taught that happiness isn't a math equation where joy equals accumulation. It's the quiet thrill of mastery, of knowing your handful of possessions so intimately that each serves multiple roles, like a cast iron skillet that sears steaks, bakes bread, and becomes a family heirloom. Wealth is not having great possessions, he reminded his students, but having few wants. Think of the Japanese tea ceremony, where a single bowl's imperfections are celebrated as much as its utility. Or the Danish concept of hygge, finding luxury in candlelight and thick socks rather than chandeliers. These aren't compromises, they're rebellions against the exhausting lie that happiness scales with quantity. When Seneca advised his friend Lucilius to set aside certain days for simple living, he wasn't prescribing punishment, he was offering liberation. The kind that comes when you realize a library card grants more adventure than a private jet, or that a picnic under an old oak tree nourishes the soul more than a Michelin-starred tasting menu. So here's your challenge. What's your version of Cato's market stroll? Maybe it's brewing coffee at home and savoring the ritual instead of rushing through a drive-through. Or rediscovering the library's quiet aisles instead of loading another digital cart. It could be as simple as wearing your favorite sweater on repeat until it tells the story of your winters. Because Stoic frugality at its best isn't about cutting costs, it's about uncovering the hidden tax that clutter, whether physical or mental, levies on your peace. When you stop chasing more, you start noticing how much you've already been given, and that realization, that's where joy lives. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, didn't just teach philosophy. He lived it through the simple rhythm of his days, proving that a harmonious life isn't about the size of your ledger, but the alignment of your resources with what matters most. Picture his teachings as an ancient budgeting app where every expense gets filtered through one question: does this move me closer to eudaimonia, that deep flourishing the Stoics considered the highest good? Modern budgets track dollars. A Stoic budget tracks virtue. Instead of columns for groceries and entertainment, imagine categories like wisdom, books, courses, courage, health investments, and justice, community support. This isn't just accounting, it's soulcraft with numbers. Epictetus, who trained students in the art of living, cut through financial confusion with a razor's edge. Wealth is a means to living well, not the end. That single sentence dismantles our cultural obsession with net worth. Think of two friends receiving bonuses. One blows it on a luxury watch to impress strangers. The other funds a local literacy program. The same amount of money, radically different budgets, one feeding ego, the other feeding souls. The Stoic approach doesn't vilify spending, it sanctifies intentionality. Your morning coffee becomes virtuous when it fuels focused work. That gym membership transforms from vanity expense to courage investment when it builds resilience. Even a vacation shifts from escapism to justice when it restores your capacity to serve others. Here's where Stoic budgeting gets revolutionary. Traditional finance asks, can I afford this? Stoicism adds, will this purchase afford me more virtue? Take the humble notebook. A minimalist might praise its low cost, a financier its utility, but a Stoic sees it as a wisdom tool, its pages future vessels for reflections that sharpen judgment. Contrast this with bargains that drain more than they give, the cheap shoes requiring constant replacement, the discounted gadget that distracts for hours. The Stoics called this false economy, where saving money wastes life energy. Try this experiment. Redraw your budget using Zeno's 4 cardinal virtues as categories. Wisdom could include education and skill building. Courage might cover health expenses or career risks. Temperance may be funds set aside to resist impulsive buys. And justice, donations, fair trade purchases, or time invested in community. Suddenly, that streaming subscription you never use reveals itself as a temperance leak, while neglected dental care emerges as a courage deficit. The goal isn't austerity, but harmony where every dollar reflects who you aspire to become. Marcus Aurelius left us a clue in his Meditations. Your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in thought. Our bank statements are ledgers of those thoughts in action. When we budget like Stoics, we're not just balancing books, we're sculpting character, because true wealth was never about having enough money. It's about money serving enough of what makes life meaningful. Wealth isn't measured in what fills your pockets, but in what no one can take from you. The unshakable peace of knowing you'd still be whole if everything vanished tomorrow. That's the Stoic secret hidden in plain sight. True abundance begins when you stop equating possessions with security. Seneca saw through the illusion early, watching Rome's elite trade their nights worrying over ledger books for gilded trinkets that brought no real joy. His warning cuts deeper now than ever. No amount of gold can fill a soul's void. You could carpet your floors with money and still feel empty because fulfillment was never hiding in the next purchase. It lives in the quiet spaces between wants, in the ability to enjoy a meal without photographing it, to wear a decade-old jacket without shame, to watch others flaunt their luxuries and feel only curiosity, not envy. Simplicity, far from being a sacrifice, becomes your greatest leverage in a world drowning in excess. Think of it like shedding a heavy backpack before a marathon. The less you carry, the farther and faster you can go. The Stoics didn't preach minimalism as an aesthetic, they practiced it as strategy. Every item you refuse to buy, every trend you ignore, every upgrade you skip isn't a loss, it's a reclaiming of attention, time, and energy. Like Diogenes in his barrel, unimpressed by Alexander's empire, you discover that power isn't in owning things, but in not needing them to feel significant. Detachment completes this trifecta, not the cold indifference of someone who scorns pleasure, but the quiet confidence of someone who knows joy was never in the object to begin with. Picture two people holding identical family heirlooms, one white-knuckled with fear it might break, the other relaxed, knowing its true value lies in memory, not porcelain. That's the Stoic edge. When you stop clinging, you stop fearing loss, and in that space you find something priceless, the freedom to engage fully without desperation. Marcus Aurelius left us a final nudge in his journals. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. No grand theorizing, no philosophical loopholes. Just action. This week, pick one area where excess has quietly taken root, maybe your overflowing closet, the subscriptions draining your account, or the mental bandwidth spent coveting someone else's vacation. Conduct your own Stoic audit, not to punish yourself but to ask, does this truly serve me or have I been serving it? If these ideas sparked even a flicker of recognition, you're already part of a quiet rebellion, one that trades glitter for grit and accumulation for authenticity. Join us in rethinking value, not because Stoicism demands it, but because your unburdened self is waiting.